Sea-gull are a Chinese brand that are known for their movement manufacture. In fact, the ST19 is an extremely popular movement. Timex use their movements. There are a bunch of micro brands that use their movements as well. And you can find the ST19 movement in watches that cost around $200 all the way up to $2,000. Today we're going to take a look at one of their dive watches. This is the Ocean Star Pro, and the quality here is really good. It could be one of the best AliExpress brands that I have featured here on my channel. So let's flip the camera and take a look at the Ocean Star from Sea-gull. So this is a really impressive watch for the price. The build quality here is excellent for the price that you are paying for this watch. You are also getting a really good package. I'll throw up pictures and photos of that packaging. The packaging is also very impressive. Large Pelican style case that could really fit 6 watches in it if you wanted to store watches in it. You also get a travel pouch, you get an extra strap, some tools. Very, very impressive overall. But the watch itself is really well made. You get a lot of 50 Fathoms vibes from it as well. That's because you're getting a domed sapphire bezel on here, a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating. And they've made some pretty good upgrades to this watch. So I've been aware of Sea-gull making watches for a very long time, and they've made dive watches I think just recently. So they just recently started making the Ocean Star. This is called the Ocean Star Pro, and this one is, I think, upgraded for 2022, the end of 2022. So they've added the sapphire bezel, but they also make other versions of this. I believe they make a carbon fiber version of this as well. This gets a beautiful bracelet, a beautiful bezel. The dial is gorgeous as well. You get a fume dial, but it's a very subtle fume, so this looks like a black dial watch unless you get it in some direct sunlight. It's black on the outside, then it's sort of like a dark gray towards the center. This gets a lot of gold tone to it as well, so the hands, the indices, the markings on the bezel. The bezel actually has an N for north in it right there. That is actually loomed. Everything else is in a gold tone. Then you have a gold surround around that date window at the 6 o'clock, which is an excellent position. I really like it at the 6 o'clock. I think it sort of balances out the dial. It does a really good job of that here. And then you have a little star right below the logo. That is applied and in gold tone as well. The hands are segmented sword hands. There's a little bit of skeletonization. And then you have an arrow for the second hand. All of that is loom. We'll do a loom shot towards the end. I have no idea if the loom is good here, but we will definitely check it out towards the end. The case itself is very nicely finished. Turning it on its side, you can see you sort of have scalloped edges here, and it is chamfered. You have a really nice line of polish, very curvy lugs, I would say. They're pretty curvy. And then you have a big sign crown on here. It is polished. Then you have a polished bezel. There's a little bit of a different notch to it. There's a little area where there is no notching, which looks good. And then you have a beautiful bracelet, the bracelet on here with outer polished links, which is really cool that they did this on this watch. So, you know, it's good for wearing the watch and getting it scratched. So if you want a little bit of polish in your bracelet, but you don't want it to really scratch up that much, you get, you know, brushed inner links rather than polished, so it looks really good for a little bit longer than you normally would if you had polished inner links. You get a pin and collar system in the bracelet. That's not the best, and you don't have any half links, so I would like to see a half link here or 1 or 2. And then you have a very generic micro brand buckle. I have to call it that because that's essentially what it is. It says Sea-gull on it, very lightly signed. This is probably the only disappointing part of this bracelet. It's a really nice bracelet. This buckle does let it down a little bit. You only have 3 positions of micro adjust. It's a small bracelet, but with that being said, it is very functional, works very well. It's mostly stamped. It doesn't really match the bracelet. The bracelet is such a nice bracelet, and the buckle kind of lets it down a little bit. The case back is also really nice as well. Beautifully stamped. You have the Ocean Star star right there, and it is really nicely stamped. You have a wave pattern. The star, there's no sharp edges. It gives you obviously information on the watch. It's screwed in. You get 300 meters of water resistance, and you do get a screwed in crown, as I mentioned before. So lots to like about this watch. It's a little bit disappointing with that buckle. That's the only thing that I think really lets that bracelet down. The bracelet is super impressive though. I will do close-ups. It's really nicely finished and it feels very robust, very well made in your hand, especially considering the price again. The other thing that I find a little bit, I don't want to say bad about this watch, it's bad for me because I have very dry hands, is the bezel action. So the bezel action is actually good. It's just really hard for me to turn. Because I have such dry hands, I have to actually grab it from the side like this. But you could hear the bezel action is excellent. It feels really good and the clicks are very, very precise. It sounds great. It's just a really, it's not really easy to grip if you have dry hands. The same thing goes for the crown because the crown is polished. When you unscrew the crown, it looks like a large crown. It is a large crown, but it's not a wide or a long crown. So you can see it's actually pretty small. I'll do a close-up so you can see what I am talking about. It's actually a nice crown. Everything works really well. Very, very nice feeling to it. Pops out, and of course, you have a date, so you have a date position. This gets basically a ETA clone inside. I believe it's called the ST2130, which is a clone of the 2824. So they put this in a lot of watches. There are a lot of watches out there that use that movement. There are a lot of AliExpress brands that use that movement. Sea-gull are in a bunch of different watches. Even Timex use Sea-gull movement. So they are very reliable, that have been around for quite some time now. The most popular is obviously the ST19. I think you see that in tons of watches out there, but these are very reliable. ETA clones, obviously, ETA clones. Good movement. So price on this watch, and then we will do quick measurements. The price on this watch is normally, I think, $456. Right now they're having a sale for $411. I think that's a really good price for a very nicely made dive watch. I have to say, this is a very, very nicely made dive watch. It is on the larger side, so it's about a 44 millimeter watch, but you do get female end links on this bracelet. They put a lot of thought into the links and the setup of the bracelet, and that's why I was saying in the quality, it's definitely on par with a lot more expensive watch bracelet wise. It's just that clasp that sort of lets it down a little bit. But let's quickly do measurement. And it's not exactly 44 millimeters at the bezel, so it's a little bit smaller at 43.7. And at the case, it wears basically like a 43 millimeter watch, I would say. The lugs are pretty short compared to the rest of the size of the watch. The thickness here, really not a bad thickness for a 300 meter dive watch. At 12.9 millimeters, you get a very big crown, as I mentioned, 6.9 millimeters, so almost 7 millimeter crown. Female end links, so you do get just about a 51 millimeter lug span, and that is including the bracelet, so it's essentially the same if you measure at the bracelet. So it is big, but it's not overly big, and it doesn't wear very, very big on your wrist. So pretty good, and $411 right now. I think this is an excellent price for this watch with the sapphire bezel. Really beautiful textured dial as well. So you're getting a little bit of a sand texture. It just says Ocean Star right there and 300 meters of water resistance. It has the Sea-gull logo, and it just says Sea-gull below that, right below the 12 o'clock. And then, of course, you have that little star and the date with the surround. Really nice. Really, really nice job on this watch. Let me quickly throw it on my 7.5 inch wrist, and then we will do a quick loom shot and wrap up the video. So today I have on my Citizen. This is my Citizen ProMaster Dive in Super Titanium with a blue dial. Well, there you go. I have a 7.5 inch wrist. This is a 43.7 millimeter watch at the bezel. It's a little bit smaller at the case, but you do have these crown guards that sort of jut out. So I would say it wears like a 43 or a 44 millimeter watch. In between the two, basically spot on for its size. You do have female end links, so the lug to lug 51 millimeters. Actually wears very comfortable on my 7.5 inch wrist. There are no issues with fitment. And then it's around 12.9 millimeters thick, which I think is excellent for a 300-meter dive watch. Very, very nice watch. Really nicely made, but it also looks great on my 7.5 inch wrist, and especially the bracelet, the case, the finishing, everything, the packaging that you're getting. You're getting a watch that is finished and looks like a watch that costs way more than the $411. Let's check out the lume. I have no idea if the lume is good. If the lume is good on here, this would be a killer watch at that price. So there you go. Lume is good. It's more liberally applied to the indices and hands. There's just a little bit on the bezel, and that is that N right there in the bezel for north. I think it looks good, but I wish there was a little bit more lume in the bezel. Overall, I think it looks decent, especially for the $411 price point and everything that you are getting with this watch. There's a lot of good components to this watch. I really think it's nicely made. The bezel action is really good. You have a beautiful sapphire bezel, sapphire crystal, really nice movement in here, 28-24 clone, and then you have this bracelet and case that are finished really nicely. Obviously, it's not hanging on that great lume-wise. It could do for a little bit more lume, but it's not terrible. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think of this watch? What do you think of Sea-gull? Sea-gull making a watch, sort of like if Etta decided to make a watch. Sea-gull make workhorse movements. This is sort of a workhorse watch. Well made, and something that you could definitely wear day to day and beat up, and I think this would really hold up to it. It's actually very, very nicely made. Tell me what you think down in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you in the next video.